RPG. Call of Cthulhu. I'd like to say hello to all of you and welcome you to this rather odd talk. So, to begin, I would like to make a brief disclaimer about the man himself. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of Lovecraft and his notoriety as a writer, as well as his infamy as a man. To begin with, Lovecraft was not very fond of people on the whole. He was very isolationist. Even when he got married, he spent as little time with his wife as possible. He hated the city, and he died alone. But the controversial parts of his life come in relation to race and class. Lovecraft was, in all senses, a very racist and pretty abhorrent man when it came to his views. And I think that sometimes reflects in his work. But I would like to talk to you about why I think it is okay to like Lovecraft and enjoy his works. And what I would say is that, number one, this man died nearly 100 years ago, alone. So he didn't even have that good a life, which I think kind of serves him right. Two, nearly all of Lovecraft's works, like these, are in the public domain, meaning that the man himself doesn't really get any money from it. And number three, I believe in separating the writing from the author as two separate pieces. And if the writing itself has something awful in it, then you can complain about that. But Lovecraft really tends not to. There are only a few instances where he really shows off his darker, meaner side. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 books here. And I thought it would be nice if you, that's right, you, told me which one you would be interested in looking at first. So, write in the comments which book you want me to begin with, and I'll read some excerpts from it. Excerpts from the book. Just let me know. We have my friend here watching on. His name is Bartholomew. He's a good boy, if a little rattly. So we have Tales of Horror, Terror Australis. I don't know the name of this one. I think it's, let's have a look. Lovecraft Short Stories and Eldritch Horrors. Well, since you all don't seem to mind, why don't we begin from the bottom up? Australis. So, this was from Call of Cthulhu. And Cthulhu is perhaps one of the most famous Lovecraft creations. He is often depicted as a giant monster with bat wings, green skin, sharp claws, and a tentacle-laden face, like an octopus. Although, of course, if you are aware of Lovecraft mythology, we cannot be truly sure what he looks like. No elder gods can be viewed by mortal eyes. Terra Australis was a expansion pack of the Call of Cthulhu RPG released in 2016, I believe. The edition I'm talking about, 7th edition, Call of Cthulhu. And this is the 2nd edition of Terra Australis, Call of Cthulhu, from the land down under. I come from a land down under, where women flow and men gender. And what I found incredibly interesting was that the creators of Call of Cthulhu decided to go for such, I don't want to offend anyone here, but such a strange country. Australia is not in the media very much. It's not very well known, really. No one really knows about it, apart from stereotypes. It's kind of this unknown place. It's fully explored, obviously, and people live there. But in the media, it's not portrayed very well at all. It's just seen as this dust bowl with a couple of, shacks scattered about, which obviously is not true. They have, I think, 5 major cities, which someone in America might scoff at, and someone in England might go, 5? Are you kidding me? How big is the place? Christ. But, I found it incredibly interesting. So, if we open it up here, table of contents, we have Introduction, Australian History and Geography, Australians, Resources for 1920s Australia, Australian cities. I wonder if any of you can name all the Australian cities, the big ones at least. We have Sydney, Melbourne, and I am led to believe, I am well aware actually, that Sydney and Melbourne have quite a big rivalry between them, although I'm not sure why. Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane. I noticed the Gold Coast is not mentioned, but I'm fairly sure that's because the Gold Coast wasn't really a city in the 1920s. We have, oh my goodness, I'm afraid I'm going to butcher this word, and I really don't want to, because I know it's an Aboriginal word. So Algeringa, I assume, which is the dream kind of scape that was believed to be, in their mythology. Very interesting. I learned a lot about Aboriginal mythology through this book. They were quite respectful, to be honest, which I was shocked. The mythos in Australia. An introduction to Australia. Let's move this a little closer. as the continental United States, but as a fraction of the inhabitants. 6 million people in 1925. Beyond the settled area, 3/4 of the land is outback, scrub plains, and grassland that seem to sweep forever. During the 1920s, Australia is an independent domination within the British Commonwealth, and they still are today. They're one of the few regions of the British Empire still remaining, although they're basically autonomous. The same with Canada, I believe, and probably Jamaica, although I'm not 100% sure. There was no meaningful central taxation until 1942. Wow. Well, let's skip ahead a bit. Okay, this is something interesting. Aboriginal naming conventions. This is what I was talking about when I was saying the very respectful way that these people have shown Aboriginals. Throughout Terra Australis, the term Aboriginal people has been used for the indigenous population of Australia, often known as Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander people. There continues to be a debate on the usage of the term. Prior to colonisation, Aboriginal people identified by their language, group, or by the area inhabited, and where possible, this book attempts to use this convention. No offense is intended. You know, very interesting. I have noticed some people talking about Tasmania, which is so cool that I have some people listening from there. Tasmania really isn't referenced in this book. No one cares about it, and I'm so sorry. I noticed that too. I was like, that's so strange. Why is no one talking about that? But it's just not really referenced. I know about Tasmania because it has such an amazing name. Back in the day, it was called Van Diemen's Land, and it's not even because of the Tasmanian Devils. The guy who found it was just called Van Diemen, which is quite frankly insane that happened to, be a thing. Now let's move on to something a bit more interesting and Lovecraftian. So this is all the history of Lovecraft. Here we see an interesting map of the exploration. So in the 1800s, there were 2 dots of where Australia had been explored. 1815, Tasmania explored. 1830, there's a whole lower section. 1840, all around here, small amounts. The desert, nearly not explored at all. 1850, again, the Gold Coast established. All of that would be that's Victoria, and that would probably be I don't know, maybe Perth around there. Tasmania. I'm not sure what's around here. I'm very sorry, but I'm not sure what's in Western Australia. Then you 1865. It's nearly all covered except for this spot here. And by 1875, only these brief sections which would almost definitely just be desert. You know. Let's find some interest. So we have Perth. That's where Perth is. Okay, I was thinking of Brisbane. So we have Queensland, New South Wales. Very specific name there, guys. Victoria. That's the state with, I think, the biggest population, and it's the smallest state. South Australia, the Northern Territory, Western Australia. So, Americans, you have, 50 states. and that's in the same land as this. So consolidate your shit. Australia's got it right. They've got like what 7 states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's more than anyone needs. This whole section is just a state on its own. That's huge. That's like, how many Englands is that? Like, I get the reason they've done this was because this is completely uninhabitable. But like, you know, it's just interesting. There's a part in this that I really want to find where it just gives weird facts about Australia. I can't remember. Uluru and Ayers Rock. That's cool. That's just a huge red rock in the center of the Australian desert. It's quite sacred to the people who live in that region, and it has 2 names: Uluru, which is the actual official name by the population who lived there, and the name that the white settlers gave it, Ayers Rock, which has such a funny backstory. So, Ayers Rock was found by this explorer, and his last name wasn't Ayers, but he named it Ayers in honor of the father of the girl he wished to marry. So he named it Ayers Rock, got all the documents done, and then he went back home to England and she'd married someone else, but he couldn't change the name, so it was just named after some guy who he had no affiliation with anymore. That's so funny to me. This is interesting. Aboriginal life. Back to the Stone Age. This was a huge myth spread around that Aboriginals were very basic and tribalist, didn't settle down. And while it's true that some groups were more nomadic, which isn't a sign of being less intelligent, by the way, white people from the 1800s, but, you know, they actually did have quite a few settlements, but they were actually mostly destroyed by the white settlers, unfortunately, which is very sad. But although I did find it interesting that they never really discovered the uses of metal. Aboriginal, they might have, but I've never seen anything like that, which I think is very interesting. They mostly used wood. Oh gosh. So this tells you about the different types of ways people were treated. So sports and fun. Yeah. Wow. So this is quite funny. They're talking about homosexuality here. And that's for if you want to play a gay character within the RPG. But it's illegal to be gay in Australia in the 1920s, which is awful, but obviously that was around the time. But it's not illegal to be a lesbian. It's totally fine. It's neither recognized or penalized by the law. Because people were weird like that. They were like, gay women, I don't think they exist. Gay men, though, ban that shit. So if you want to play a lesbian character, you kind of just can. Like, okay. Throughout the 20th century, many people lived in squares and lived occasional camps. Yeah, it's not good to be gay, is the takeaway from this in Australia in the 20s. Do you Woolloomooloo? Pronunciation of Australian name places is something that is frequently confused by visitors and in many cases quickly portrays them as foreigners. Yeah. The confusion derives from which way the locals speak. They drift towards the lazier vowel sounds. The following places are commonly mispronounced. Brisbane should be pronounced Brisbane. Yeah, I think I've been saying that right. No, yeah. Sorry, just reading it. Melbourne should be pronounced Melbourne, not Melbourne. That's true. Canberra. but I wasn't even trying. No, I know how to say Canberra. Canberra should be pronounced Canberra, not Canberra. Cans. This is why I have the book. Cans should be pronounced cans, not cans. And how do you pronounce Woolloomooloo? Well, I fucking got that one. Did it. Woolloomooloo. Let's talk about slang in Australia. Apples. That means whatever the problem is, everything will be okay. She's apples. She'll be alright. Arvo. Afternoon. Also after. Now, some of these are all 1920s expressions, so some of them might not exist anymore. Banana bender. Person from Queensland. Bacharach. So, barrack. To heckle or jeer someone or something particular in a sport. So, billabong. I love that word. Billabong is a small body of water. Bloke. Male person. Digger. Member or ex-digger of the Australian Imperial Force, sometimes abbreviated to DIG, taken from the term for gold miners in the 1850s. The minister throughout the Great War was nicknamed the Little Digger. Dingo, native Australian dogs, which somehow acquired the reputation for cowardice and treachery. I'm telling you now, dingoes are not cowardly. I have a dog who is a Kelpie, which is an Australian cattle breed, and Kelpies are descendants from dingoes, essentially. It's where a regular dog bred with a dingo, and she is not scared of anything. She just straight up runs at danger like a moron. Dob in to break confidence by ratting on someone's authorities. Knock. A spoil sport. Pommy. This one still stands. Pommy. Any person from England with a notable English accent. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Some Australian phrases. I doubt any of these are used anymore, but if you guys know if these are used, I would love it, because I've never heard of these. A month of Sundays, meaning a very long time. As miserable as a bandicoot in a burnt-out ridge. Desolate. Busy as a one-armed bill poster in high winds. Rather busy. Fair cow. Anything which perversely refuses to do what you want it to do. So you say fair cow. Oh, sorry. Flat out, like lizards drinking. To do something quickly. Give it a bash. That means give it a go. He's got kangaroos in the top paddock. An individual who is crazy, stark raving mad. Bizarre. Let's find some interesting facts before we move on to the next book. Strike. Let's find some more facts, shall we? There's so much interesting stuff in here that you can just learn about Australian culture if you're interested. Like, if you were living on the other side of the world, this is such an interesting book to read. Here we go. Strange Australia. These are the ones I'm looking for, these little factoids that talk about strange things in Australia. Rumours persist that 3 additional deaths occurred during the construction of the Harbour Bridge, and allegedly hushed up by the authorities. 3 men fell into a huge pylon supporting the structure. As their bodies were too difficult to retrieve, it said that they were entombed within the pylon. spooky. Strange Australia. River monsters. Located in West and North Sydney is the Hawkesbury River, which is said to dwell a river monster. Accounts talk of a long neck which sits a snake-like head attached to a large body with flippers and an eel-like tail. Crushed the abandoned boats, strange tracks in the riverbank, and unusual disappearances speak of strange goings-on at the river. Indeed, the Drow people who once lived in the area depict a water monster on some rock art 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. Strange Australia. Quarantine stations. Isn't that interesting and rather relevant? North Head Quarantine Station on the north side of Sydney Harbour operated between 1832 and 1984, holding each processor coming through to start a new life in Australia. Each person arriving was held for quarantine to up to 40 days to ensure they carried no infectious diseases such as smallpox, bubonic plague, and typhoid. Records show some 600 people died while held there, while many others suffered from some barbaric treatments. Years later, visitors to the site have alleged seeing eerie lights in the hospital wards and sensations of cold hands touching them, with ghostly apparitions wandering the corridors. So Australia, for the longest time, was very paranoid about a outbreak of a disease in their country, which is quite interesting considering what's happening currently. Wow. Plague in 1921, always with the 20s, thanks largely due to poor housing conditions, bubonic plague broke out within the inner city of Sydney, brought on by rats, and the plague created a giant panic in the city, causing 10 deaths. The local authorities fought a losing battle to improve sanitation in the city. Rat catchers caught 8,018 rats in the subsequent raids in an attempt to increase rubbish. The incineration was created so much waste, created piles of smoke, causing outbreaks of respiratory illness. Australia had a bout of bubonic plague. I think we'll probably finish with this book now, unless you want me to continue or move on. Just let me know in the comments. So I'll finish reading this and then I'll look at the comments. The Red Bank Tunnels. Picton, about an hour southwest of Sydney, proceeds 590 feet through the hill and was the location for many suicides who would throw themselves into oncoming trains. The tunnel was serviced from 1867 to 1919, but closed down due to numerous deaths. One such suicide was Emily Borden, who died in 1919. Emily's ghost is believed to haunt the tunnel. Strange Australia. The Alert. One of the most interesting of Sydney's many ferries is the Alert. The vessel once owned by the cultist devout to the Great Cthulhu, which ultimately piloted itself by Guster Johnson to ram into the Great Old One. As related in Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu, from late 1925, the vessel, reconditioned after its ordeal in the Pacific, belonged to a Great Hunter steam navigator company, which operated a regular ferry around Sydney Harbour. It can still be found on the docks of Woolloomooloo. How are we feeling about the book, guys? Would you like me to move on? Or stay with this? More legends. More legends of terror. Australis. I suppose we should move on then. We can come back to this later if you want. But we also have Eldritch Tales, for some reason written in papyrus font. I mean, I'm fine with that, I think it's odd. Yeah. Oh. You'll have to excuse me for 1 second. I just need to get something. 1,000 apologies. Who will know something of me? I am lost, no one knows. There's no trace of my yearning if I die, but I must. There's no trace of my yearning. I return. I'm awfully sorry about that interruption. You can rest if you feel tired. Just watch until you drift off to sleep. It's okay. Just listen to the sounds, but you don't need to comprehend them. So, we have this rather lovely book here, discussing the works of H.P. Lovecraft. The stories we have here are History of the Necronomicon, The Alchemist, The Reminiscence of Dr. Samuel Johnson, The Beast in the Cave, The Poet's Nightmare, Memory, Despair, The Picture in the House, Beyond the Walls of Sleep, Psycho, Compass, A Tale of Rhyme, The White Ship, The House, The Night involving the late Arthur Jeremy and his family, the crawling chaos, the terrible old man, the tree, the tomb, sci-fi, hypnosis, what the moon brings, the horror at Martin's Beach, the temple, Halloween in a suburb, the moon bog, festival, the green meadow, North-Sike, the black bottles, the last test, the woods, the ancient track, the electric executioner, and then we have, oh, so much of the fungi of Yuggoth. All of these are part of the fungi. Yuggoth. The Descent, the Book, the Messenger, the Evil Clergyman, the Very Old Folk, the Thing in the Moonlight, the Transition of Julio Ramento, Supernatural Horrors in Literature, Afterward, Lovecraft in Britain, by Stephanie Jones and other collaborators and revisions. So many works, so little time. What shall we discuss? Something nice and short, I think. Let's look. The Nightmare Lake. I think that one sounds nice. And it seems short. Could be the house, either. I'm picking a nice short one, so we're looking for 77. The house, that's the one. 'Tis a grove-circled dwelling, set close to a hill, where branches are telling strange legends of ill over timbers so old they breathe of the dead, crawl the vines green and cold, by the strange nourishment fed, and no man knows the juice they suck, for the depths of their stank, slimy bed. In the garden are growing tall blossoms and fair, each pallid bloom throwing perfume in the air. By the afternoon sun, with its shining red rays, makes the pictures loom done on the curious gaze, and above the sweet scent of the blossoms rides the odors of numberless days. The rank grasses are waving on the terrace and lawn, dim memories serving of things that have gone. The stones of the walks are encrusted and wet, and the strange spirit stalks when the sun has set, and the soul of the watcher is filled with faint pictures he fain would forget. It was in the hot June times I stood by that scene, when gold rays of noontime beat bright on the green. But I shiver with cold, grope feeling for light, as picture unrolled my age-spanning sight. So the time I had been there before flashed like the gullies out of the night. This is another nice short one. It's called The Nightmare Lake. There is a lake in distant Seine, beyond the wound haunts of man, where brood alone in hideous state the spirits dead and desolate, an ancient city and unholy, heavy with fearsome melancholy, with which the waters dull and dense draw vaporous curses with pestilence around the banks, and mire of clay sprawl things offensive in decay. And curious birds that reach that shore are seen by mortals nevermore. Here shines by day and searing sun on glassy waste, beheld by none, and here by night pale moonbeams flow into the depths that yawn below. In nightmares only is it told what scenes beneath those beams unfold. What seems too old for human sight lies sunken there in endless night. For those depths there only pace in shadows of a voiceless race. One midnight, redolent of ill, I saw that lake, asleep and still. While the lurid skies there rode the gibbon's moon that glowed and glowed for the stretch of marshy mountain shore, and the foul thing those Martians bore, lizards and snakes convulsed and dying, ravens and vampires putrefying, all these horrifying of the dead necrofiends that on them fed. And as the dreadful moon climbed high, frightening stars from out the sky, I saw the lake's dull water glow, till sunken things appeared below. Their shores unnumbered, fathoms down, the towers of a forgotten town, the tarnished domes of mossy walls, wheat-tangled spires and empty halls, desert fanes and vaults of dread and streets of gold uncovered. These I beneath, and saw beside the horde of shapeless shadows glide, and noxious hordes, which to my glance seemed moving in a hideous dance. Round slimy sepulchres I lay beside. I never travelled away. Straight from those tombs, and here it rose in the vexed waters, dull repose, when the lethal shades of up glass howling in the moon to Sonic's face. Then sank the lake within its bed, sucked down the caverns from the tread. New forms reaching, new stripped earth, good fountain fumes of noxious birth. About the city, night uncovered, monstrous dancing shadows hovered, then lo, open a sudden stir with the portal each of sepulchre. No ears may learn, no tongue may tell what nameless horrors then befell. that city and the things within. Walking, I pray that shore, the nightmare lake, may sink no more. I think that that's an interesting one. I hope you enjoyed that, because I tried my best. Do you want to hear a story about what's been going on in my life? When I sleep at night, I hear something. I hear a tapping through my walls, a scratching. I do. I hear a scratching in my walls, and I spoke to the owner of the house, and I said, "There's something in my walls. I can hear it at night." And he said, "Well, I hear nothing, but for my own sanity, I will put rat traps and poison in the ceiling." And he did. And yet, tonight, for the first time in a while, I heard it again. The scratching at first, and then... Now, I may not know the size of rats, but that was one loud thump. Something larger than a rat. And I know nothing larger than that could fit within the walls. And yet I heard it. And whenever I ask people to hear it with me, there's nothing. No sound. But when they leave the room, and I mean it, the moment they leave the room, it makes the noise. And I have begun to think perhaps whatever it is mocking me. And they are calling me crazy. They're telling me that I'm hearing things. But it's not true. I tried recording it, but when I turned on my phone, it wouldn't make the noise. And the moment I put my phone away, I just can't seem to get the timing right. Let's move on to our next book. What do you say, Bartholomew? Of course he says nothing, for he is dead. Dark Lovecraft short stories. Oh, this is a lovely sound to it. Beautiful interior. Contents: the tomb, Dagon, Polaris, beyond the walls of sleep, the white ship, the doom that came to Sarnath, a statement of Rudolph Carter, the cats of Ulthar. That sounds like a good one, doesn't it? We all like cats. child certainly liked cats, although I'd say he had a complicated relationship with them. It is said that in Ulthar, which lies beyond the river sky, no man may kill a cat. And that this I can verily believe, as I gaze upon him who sitteth purring before the fire. For the cat is cryptic and close to strange things which men cannot see. He is the soul of the antique Egyptians, and bears the tales of forgotten cities, Meros and Ophir. He is the kin of the jungle lords, and the heir to the secret hoardery of sinister Africa. The Sphinx is his cousin, and he speaks their language, but he is more ancient than the Sphinx, and remembers that which she hath forgot. What a gripping start. In Ulthar, before even the Burgess foreblade, the killing of cats, there dwelled an old cutter and his wife, who delighted to trap and slay cats of their neighbours. Why they did this, I do not know, save that many hate the voice of cats in the night, and that take an ill cat should run stealthily around the gardens and yards at twilight. But every cat which came near to their hovel, and some sound of heaven, the villagers do not discuss such a thing. Oh, I missed the line, sorry. Dog, many villagers fainted that he managed to slay with excitedly peculiar. But the villagers do not discuss such things with the old man and his wife, because the habitable expressions on their withered faces of the two, because their cottage was so small and darkly hidden beneath the spread oak, the back of a neglected yard. The truth, as much as the owners hated these old folks, they feared them more. Instead of berating them as brutal assassins, merely took care that no cherished pet or monsieur should step forward to that remote hovel under the darkened trees, where through some unavoided oversight a cat was missed, and a sound was heard after dark. The loser, some unavoidable oversight, would lament, potentially, or console himself by thanking fate that it was not one of his children who had thus vanished. For the people of Ulthar were simple. They knew not whence his cat first came. I could continue, but I feel as if this story is worth reading, and I suggest you do so. The Cats of Ulthar. A darkly gripping tale, probably more for cat lovers than dog lovers like myself. I'm only kidding. Once a day, a caravan of strange wanderers from the south entered the narrow, cobbled streets of Ulthar. Dark wanderers they were, and unlike the other roving folk who passed through the village twice a year. In the marketplace, they told fortunes for silver, They bought gay beads from the merchants. What land these wanderers, no one could tell. But it was seen they gave strange prayers. They painted on their sides of the wagon strange figures with human bodies and the heads of cats, hawks, rams, and lions. The leader of the caravan wore a headdress with 2 horns, and a curious disc betwixt the horns. There was a strange, singular caravan boy, with no father or mother, but only a tiny black kitten to cherish. The plague had not been kind to him, yet had left him this small, furry thing to mitigate his sorrows. When one is very young, one can find it very relieving, the lively antics of a black kitten. So the boy whom the dark people called Menace smiled more often than he wept. He sat playing with his grateful kitten on the steps of the oddly painted wagon. On the 3rd morning of the wanderer's stay in Ulthar, Menace could not find his kitten, and he sobbed aloud in the marketplace. Certain villagers told him of the old man and his wife, and the sounds heard in the night, and when he heard these things he sobbed, gave place to meditation, and finally to prayer. He stretched out his arms towards the sun and prayed in a tongue no villager could understand, though indeed the villagers did not even try very hard to understand, since their attention was mostly taken up by the sky and the odd-shaped clouds that were assuming. It was very peculiar. As the little boy uttered his penchant, there seemed forth overhead the shadows, nebulous figures of exotic things, of hybrid creatures crowned with horned flat discs. Nature is full of such illusions to impress the imagination. That night, the wanderers left Ulthar and were never seen again, and the household they were troubled when they noticed that the village there was not a cat to be found. For each hearth of the family cat had vanished. Large cats, small cats, black, grey, striped, yellow, white. Old Karen, the burgomaster, Canon, swore that the dark folk had taken the cats away in revenge for killing Menace's kitten, and cursed the caravans and the little boy. But Nith, the lean notoriety, declared that the old cotter and his wife more likely persons to suspect, for their hatred of cats was notorious and increasingly bold. Still, no one durst complain to the sinister couple, even when little Atalat, an innkeeper's son, vowed that at that twilight he had seen all the cats of Ulthar accusing the yard underneath as if performing some sort of unheard rite of the beasts. The villagers did not know much to believe the small boy, although they feared that the evil pair had charmed their cat to their death, and they preferred not to chide on Cotter until they met him outside in the dark, repellent yard. So Ulthar went to sleep in vain anger, and when the people awakened in dawn, behold, every cat was back in his accustomed hearth. Large, small, black, grey, striped, yellow, white, none were missing. Very sleek and fat did the cats appear, and sodden with purring content. The citizens talked with one another about this affair and marvelled not a little. Old Conan again insisted that it was the dark folk who had taken them, since the cats had not returned alive from the cottage, from the ancient man had taken them. Since cats did not return alive, yeah. But all agreed on one thing, that the refusal of all cats to eat their portions of meat or drink their sources of milk was exceedingly curious. And for 2 whole days, the sleek, lazy cats of Ulthar would not touch their food, but dozed by the fire in the sun. It was a full week before the villagers noticed that no lights appeared at dusk in the window of the cottage under the trees, and that Nia remarked that no one had seen the old man or his wife since that night. Then, that night the cats were away. In another week, the burgomaster decided to overcome his fears and call at the strangely silent dwelling as a matter of duty. Though doing so, he was careful to take with him Shang, the blacksmith, and Tull, the cutter of stones, as witnesses, as when they had broken down the fragile door, they found only this: 2 cleanly picked human skeletons on the earthen floor, and a number of singular beetles crawling in the shadowy corners. There was subsequently much talk amongst the burghese of Ulthar. Zan, the corn disputed the length with Nil. Ali, Notoriety, and Karen and Shakam Thol were overwhelmed with questions. Even little Atan, the innkeeper's son, was closely questioned, given sweetmeats as a reward. They talked in the old cotter and the wife, the caravan of dark travellers, of some more menace of the black kitten, of the prayers to menace. Not the sky during the prayer. Of the doings of the cats that night, the caravan left, and what was later found the cottage under the trees in the reptile yard. In the end, the burgess passed. They remarked the remarkable law which told all traders and others, and discussed travellers near, mainly, that in Ulthar no man may kill a cat. I hope you enjoyed that. I wonder if you're more of cat people or dog people. I only had a cat once in my life. I was very young, and it lashed out at my sister and scarred her right across the face, dug in deep, and she still has those scars today. I'm not much of a cat person. Of course, I do find cats very nice. So I was only joking about that. Not about the scars or anything, that really did happen, but about me not liking cats. I do like them. You can't blame one animal for the hatred of a whole species. As I recall, we left that cat when we moved house and gave it to the new owners. And then we got my dog. Dogs, of course, can be aggressive too, but you can usually tell by the tail wagging. With cats, it's kind of up in the air. So, the final book is called Tales of Horror, and you can buy it at your local Costco. Or you could at one point, I'm sure. Or Kroger's, I think. They sell it. But, this has basically the same stories as the others, so we won't worry about that. If we're talking about scars, I've had quite a few in my life. To be honest, they were mostly my fault, but I had one, I think, yeah, there it is. It's faded now, but I had one going all the way along here. And the way I did that was I was playing with a butter knife, and I scraped it along my arm, and I didn't realize someone had sharpened the butter knife, and it cut straight through me. Another instance, I was playing with a knife again. I was a younger boy, and I dropped it, and it landed straight in my thigh. It was still standing up, actually. When I looked down, it was just sticking up in my thigh. And I was a bit shocked about that. And then, of course, there was the time I was stabbed on my lower back. Yeah, I have a very big scar there. But that wasn't an intentional stabbing, don't worry. They were very apologetic. That wasn't with a light, though. That was with a light fixture. They stabbed me into a light fixture. Yeah. What other thing can we talk about when relating to Lovecraft? Would you like to see some of the other books? Would you like to go back to one of the books, is what I meant. Oh, and just so you know, I was reading your comments about my hands. Just letting you know. Anyway, which book would you like me to go back to? Perhaps maybe Terra Australis? What do you think, Bartholomew? Let's listen to Bartholomew. Whose skull is this? Okay, let's just put that there. Right. Arrange these books in a nice aesthetic way to show off their covers or spines. I find that nice and relaxing. Showing off a book's nicest side. Okay. I have actually been reading a new book called Lovecraft Country. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the author, but it's a story about some African American people traveling through the South in the 50s and encountering Lovecraftian situations while having to deal with racist cops and the KKK and that kind of thing. It's incredibly interesting, I think, because it shows me American culture I've never really seen before. It's obviously negative, but it's interesting nonetheless. Showing the things like the sundown towns, the Green Book, that kind of thing. I hear that someone wants to see the Oceanside map. Maybe I'll do that. Do I like Edgar Allan Poe? I don't really know Edgar Allan Poe that well. I love the one story I've read of him, which is obviously The Raven, but yeah. That's exactly what I thought about Lovecraft being notoriously racist, mixing with the whole idea of race relations in America, which was the intent of the author to bring to light the flaws of Lovecraft while using his own creations like Shoggoths and Old Ones. Very fascinating. I don't really want to spoil anything, so just pause and I'll give you. Oh no, mute, sorry. And I'll give you this sign when you can come back if you don't want any spoilers about Lovecraft Country. But they read in the Green Book, I think it's called Green Book, which is a book which tells you where African Americans could go to eat, sleep, that kind of stuff when they're on the road, like which hotels, which bars, which places would take them. And anyway, they go into this cafe that was supposed to be good, like safe for them, but the name has changed and there's been a new paint job, so all the exterior and interior are now white paint. And when they're in there, there's a lot of tension going on, right? And then one of them says to the other, "Do you know why they painted the White House white?" And he says, "Well, if I recall, that was because during the War for Independence, the Civil War, it was burnt, and the only way they could cover the burn marks was with white paint." And it was just such a horrific moment to realize that what had happened here was the very accepting diner had been burnt down, and then, they put up the white paint to cover the burn marks. And that's when they realized that there's a lynch mob forming outside, and it was just more terrifying than anything I'd read in Lovecraft for so long. But that was a very interesting thing for me to find out. Let's look at some more stories. Let's see if we can find any more poems. Let's have a look here. See if we can find anything nice. Something simple to read to you all. Goodness. Didn't know there were pictures in this book. Here we go. I think this is... Yeah, here we go. The festival. There is snow on the ground, and the valleys are cold, and a midnight profound blackly squats on the wall. but the light of the hilltops half-seen hints of festivals, unhallowed and old. There's death in the clouds, there's fear in the night, but the dead in their shrouds hail the sun turning fright, and the chanting wildwoods as they dance around a Yule attire forgone in white. To no gales of earthkind ways the forest of oak, with the sick bound intertwined, wooden madness with mistletoe choke. From these prowls and prowls of darkness, from the graves of lost druid folk. And mayst thou do such deeds, be a bantam priest, singing cannibal greeds at each devil-wrought feast, an increasing world shrewd, dimly the signs of the beast. Lovely. Ah, and another poem. Goodness, this is a long one. But I can't pronounce the main word because Lovecraftian words are hard. So we'll move on. About that good old brothers, let's go down. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, who shall wear starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, come on down, don't you wanna go down? Oh, brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. Yeah, I think this one will do, actually. That is from one of my favourite movies, that thing. I know it's also a prayer song, but, you know. It's from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The woods. They cut it down, and where the pitch-black aisles of forest lined had hid the eternal things, they scaled the sky and towered the marble pillars to make the city their revellings. White and amazing the lands around, that wondrous wealth domes and turrets rose, crystal and ivory sublime crowned, with pinnacle that bore unmelting snows. And though its halls and pipes of stone strang, when wine riots began of scarlet stains, never voice the elder marble sang, nor the eyes called to the hills and plains. Thus down the years, till one purple night, a drunken minstrel, in careless verse, spoke the vile words they should not see the light, and stirred the shadows of the ancient curse. Forest may fall, but not dusk, they shield, for on the spots where proud cities stood, the shuddering dawn, no single stone revealed, but fled the blackness of the primal wood. Lovely. Well, I know it's getting late out there for some of you, so you can just tell me what you'd like to talk about now for a brief time, and then we'll head off to bed. So, thank you, Daybreak Audios. That's extremely kind of you to say. I like to think that I'm helping alleviate other people's boredom, as well as my own. Yeah. Sometimes it can be hard being in these kind of difficult times. I hate to say that, given the constant repetition of it, but it really is. It's hard to be yourself at the moment. What with the constant changes to the way we live. I want to let you know that everything's going to be okay. Things will recover, and they'll recover a lot sooner than you think. The media tends to hype things up as the end of days, but I really wouldn't focus on the negatives. They they build up this fear in people. But I wouldn't try and feed that. Alex Fisher says, I can't stop thinking about your cuttlefish character. It made me so happy. I'm so glad you liked him. I just noticed that you had a lot of monsters featuring squid and octopus, but no cuttlefish, which made me upset because I love cuttlefish. They're such a strange little alien creature. The only money I get on your Patreon because of how lovely you are. I just want to support you because it feels like you're always here for me. Oh, Luna, that's so sweet of you to say. That makes me feel very special. I'm very glad you did log in so I can say hello. While you think of more things to ask me, let's have a little session with Bartholomew. So, Mr. Twisted, you said you could show the map. Can we see it, please? I can show you the map, yeah, but I don't have it on me. It's a file. A file that, thinking about it, might be deleted. I sure hope not. Because my computer died with all my files on it. I was able to recover quite a few. So it should still be there. Probably. Hopefully. But I still have it backed up, so don't worry. Yeah, I can share that at some point. I'll share it on my community tab. You can all get a look at that and enjoy the map that I developed. I don't know why you're so incredibly interested, though. Oh, I'm very glad I make you sleep. I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm getting goddess. Well, I don't really know why you'd be interested in seeing the map, to be honest. I'm definitely happy to show you it, but it's just a bunch of made-up countries on a world map. It's not like, I don't know, an individual thing. It's just the world map. Shows you the different areas and I guess allows you to pinpoint kind of where certain species are probably from. Or at least it probably helps with that. Thank you. I really love building worlds, so being able to make Oceanside was kind of a dream come true. You know? I think, because the history of Oceanside is, in my mind, I could actually tell you the reason the world is the way it is. And essentially, there are the old gods and the new gods. And the old gods were this kind of basic force of creation, destruction, life, and death. And there were the forgotten gods, who were things like the Tall One and the Eyeless One and the Bloodless One. And these were beings who despised everything that was created and sought in their own ways to bring about an end to it. And they roamed the earth, creating all the monsters on it. such as the spiderkin and the vampires, but they weren't as you would know them today. They did not have the more human aspects to them. The spiderkin were very much feral, monstrous creatures with extremely long, spidery legs, and the Lamias were vicious, tribalistic snake warriors. And then, well, the new gods came. And the new gods were these beings that were created by the originals to make sense of the chaos. One of them being Inari, the Kitsune. Another one being, let me try and think. Gosh, I've mentioned a few, but the general idea is that there were these new gods, and they took what the forgotten gods had done and purified it, so as best they could in their image. So the monstrous spiderkin became humanified. They gained more human characteristics, more empathy, even if it was minimal for them because they were so monstrous to begin with. So the creatures which were in the beginning more nice, even if they were terrible, became more nicer and nicer, you see. And the darker creatures became that. And these new gods stemmed from another universe called the Fey Wild, which was, for the longest time, what that place was. It was this beautiful sanctuary, and they brought that to the other world, took chaos and made it into something beautiful. And then they trapped the old gods in books and in pendants, that kind of thing. And that's pretty much how the world came to be, and why most monsters look quite human, because they're all based on humanish designs. And also, as you might know, elves weren't part of the original world. They are a foreign kind of people, and they came through with the Fae. They were actually just straight up Fae who kind of interbred with the humans of the Oceanside universe and made elves and the various different types of elves. And there are two types of Fae. The Sunshine Court and the Moonbeam Court. The Sunshine Court are the Fae you probably saw in Oberon's video. They have kind of a tanned, light skin, wavy, longish hair, pointed elfin ears, very humanish looking. And the Moonbeam Fae have kind of a pastel blue skin, sometimes green. They have horns matching the same color as their skin, and their ears are more human. And those are the two types of Fae. The origins of the Dark and Blood Elves. Well, Dark Elves are basically just elves who decided to go into the Underdark to worship more evil gods, to become, do their own thing. There's nothing really special about them. They're just an evil sect of elves who developed into a race. The Blood Elves, however, are quite different. Blood Elves are not a race. Any elf can become a Blood Elf. And what they are is elves who have found a forgotten god, be it in a book, a shrine, a pendant, and that god has bestowed them with the god's power in order to rain chaos upon the world again, as they no longer have a physical form, and they corrupt the elf, creating a blood elf. They tend to have black eyes with colored irises, red hair, the color of blood. They also eat meat, exclusively raw meat, which most elves don't do, as I think quite a few of them are vegetarian. Yeah. fun fact about the different elves is certain elves are far more magical than others. If you don't know, for example, high elves are extremely magical versus dark elves who don't have any magic at all. Dark elves kind of lost all their magical abilities and instead use poisons and stuff. They don't know how to use magic. What else? I think sun elves can do incantations, or at least some of them can. And mycelium elves. Mycelium elves are an interesting case because they're the ones that I have the least amount of lore on, as they weren't actually initially designed by me. They were designed by my really good friend Mo Hikikomori. And yeah, I need to really work on the lore behind those guys because I do like them. If you have any other questions, today might be the day to just ask lore-based questions. Because I might as well just say anything, you know? Because I would love to develop a wiki, but I don't have the time or effort, and then I'd probably contradict myself somewhere. So, you know, if you have any questions about my characters, about any particular type of monster, I can probably give you the backstory on them, even if it's minor. Are there any keepers of the planes? Are there planes? Planes of existence, yes, there certainly are. And the keepers of the planes are the gods. So in the Fae, the keepers of the planes is actually the two kings or queens, depending on who's ruling, of the courts. So you have the Sunshine Court and the Moonbeam Court, and they rule over it. And then in the Oceanside world, you have the gods. So you have the Kitsune, who rule over the seasons, and you have the others who rule over certain dominions as well. For the life of me, I cannot remember the other gods. I know there are other gods, and I've had videos with them, but I can't remember who they are. I would absolutely adore a wiki about my stuff. It would make me so happy. I just realized you have a Patreon, and I joined. I do have a Patreon. It's basically most of my income at the moment, and thank you so much. I'm trying my best to keep up to date with stuff, but I'm being so bogged down. I'm going to try and record tomorrow a bunch of stuff. And also, hi, Anna. But yeah, as the name suggests, I love dark and twisted stuff, but because of certain things, like my friends and stuff, I was like, I guess I'll do some more cute stuff, like, I don't know, Floof the Moth or these elf boys. And that is just so good. Like, I now love doing that. I love making sweet and cute stuff as well, but it also allows me to have a sinister undertones. Is Oceanside the correct capitalization? Yes, it's capital O, Oceanside. That's about it. If you have any other questions, I happily, you know, go through them. Probably, yeah. For example, Babak, who I don't know, he wasn't super popular. I really enjoyed him, but like I'm not looking for popularity here. Just super fun. Is like a scarecrow skeleton, and what that is they're kind of like the boogeymen of Oceanside. So if a kid's bad, they'll kind of snatch you away, kill you, strip you of all your skin and flesh, and turn you into another babak, which is terrifying. Yeah. There's also like a huge pirate population in Oceanside, and they live in the Demon Isles or the Demon Islands. And so that's something I've really wanted to explore for ages. Is there is quite a big pirate population. There's also quite a few navies because there's kingdoms out there, like the Sun Elf Kingdom. Technically, the Dark Elves have a kingdom, but it's under the ground, so no one's really invading them, and they do not have a navy. Wood Elves do not have a kingdom. They're very nomadic. The Mycelium Elves don't have a kingdom. Gosh, is that all the elves? I feel like, oh, the high elves, of course. They have quite a big kingdom. Yeah, yeah. So that's something. Um, I also obviously have those stories that aren't set in Oceanside. You know, an example would be the Yandere series with Shinku. That's a very old one. Or my Android series, or my any series like that. Those aren't set in Oceanside because they're modern. So those don't really work. Those I guess are just unconnected, or in my head canon, just a third universe, which is just like kind of a modern day society with a few more technological upgrades. So that's just something to throw in there. There's no AI in Oceanside. I could do a steampunk race. Well, I was thinking about steampunk, but I thought that might not be a thing in Oceanside yet. They do have quite a bit of technology, like in a lot of senses, so it might work. Although I feel they're more inclined to do clockwork than anything else. Yeah. Oh yeah, that is the universe. There's modern Oceanside, which is a modern interpretation of my characters. It's only really exclusively on Patreon. But as an example, Salt in our in the Oceanside universe is kind of a nomad, um, like recluse. And I've never really told anyone this, but there was like a headcanon for a while that he was actually an escort and he was just doing role plays with people, which is really nice. I like that. Like in Oceanside, he's just an escort. Um, but in the modern version, Salt is a bartender. Yeah, so that's just an idea of the kind of changes. Yeah. And yeah, I would say that that kind of stuff falls in the modern Oceanside. I'm not entirely sure where Patreon stuff falls in canon. I tend to believe it's not canon, or at least parts of it aren't canon. But we'll see. When people send you, do you write a script around it, or do that you give people ideas for the characters you do? Well, actually, usually, people will be like, "Hey, I want to work with you," and then I'll, chat with them for a while about what I'm interested in. Sometimes people just send me artwork, and I use that. It honestly depends. Um, yeah, I do remember Ink and the Angel. I can't remember the name of the angel, but yeah, I remember that. I struggle to find where those guys fit in Oceanside. Although I do know that Ink obviously is canonical to Oceanside, um, but he's in modern Oceanside. If you hear the way he talks about Netflix and stuff. He's in modern Oceanside, not old Oceanside. So he's very much canon. He's just not canon in regular Oceanside the way we see him. Yeah. I try and keep my stuff consistent, but if I ever make any slip ups, just let me know. Like, it's fine. Just be like, hey, this is an inconsistency you made. I'll be like, sick. Here's the reason for that. There was a wizard and he changed the timeline. Yeah, that's all I really need to say, isn't it? Because wizards exist. So I was like, yeah, anytime you see something like that, a wizard did it. That's a reference to The Simpsons, but yeah. Well, I think if we have nothing else to discuss, which judging by the chat we don't, I I think I'll say goodbye. So I'll post the I'll post the map in my friggin' community tab ASAP, and then you can ask me questions about it there, and I can answer them. And then maybe you'll make a wiki. Apparently, I would love that, but don't go to all the effort. You'll have to scour through all my videos to find new references. So, adios. See you later. What a nice group.